Once again, welcome everybody. I'm Kitch Barnacle. I'm with CIRTL Central, based at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I want to welcome you here to this session, the final session in this series. And I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague, Rob Linsenmeyer, who will introduce the session and kick us off. So thank you all for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Linsenmeyer. I'm a professor emeritus at Northwestern University. The point of these sessions that we've been running is to take advantage of the fact that we now have an alumni network of people who have participated in CIRTL in the past, and we can utilize some of their expertise to tell us about their careers and how they got there and what CIRTL has meant to them. We're glad you've all joined us today, and I'll kick things off with a few questions, but then we'll certainly have time for questions from the audience here. Can you put up my slide there, Kitch? Okay, so today we have we've gotten slightly cut off, but it's okay. So today we have 3 people. You're gonna try that again? Okay.
Can you see it?
We can see it, but there's a lot of other background stuff up as well. Can you maximize it? Oh. There we go. All right. Thank you. 3 people who have different careers that are not in the university. So many of you who are participating today are thinking about what you want to do in the future. Obvious routes include going into research-oriented or research and teaching careers. But these people are all outside of universities now with rather different careers. So Alyssa Monzak is at NIH, at the NIDCD, where she's the intramural chief of staff and training director. That's really 2 separate things. Deb Rook is the professional development manager at BioQuest, which she will tell you about. Education related, but not academia per se. And James Schwabacher is a consultant at a life science consulting firm. So we're happy that they're all with us, and we're looking forward to hearing about them, about their careers. I think that's all we need from the slide. So I first wanted to ask you, each of you, what is your job now? You might have to tell us a little bit about the organization that you work for as part of telling us about your job. And how did your CIRTL, where did you do your CIRTL teaching development programs, and did you do a TAR project? And you can include anything else you'd like us to know about you. So Alyssa?
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. So I'm Alyssa Monzak, and as Rob said, I'm the intramural chief of staff and training director at the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, or NIDCD. And so we're part of the NIH, or the National Institutes of Health, which some people think is one big institute, but it's really 27 different institutes and centers. And it's sort of like the United States of America, right? Each one has its own culture, it's a different size, it has different leadership, it offers different programming. And so a lot of the kinds of positions that you might find in one institute, you'd find in another at the NIH. And so let's see, what do I do? I do a little bit of everything. And as Rob alluded to, in a larger institute, my job might be multiple people's jobs, but the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders is a pretty small institute, which means that its administrative staff runs pretty lean. And so we get to have our hands in a lot of different things. And so as the chief of staff, I operate in a deputy or advisory capacity to our scientific director, which is basically the person that runs our division. It's sort of like a department chair, except that in the government, our investigators aren't competing for grants. They're reviewed by these external advisory boards every 3 or 4 years. And so there's a set amount of resources that every institute has that's in an amount that's determined by Congress, and the scientific director basically gets to decide how to spend those resources. So it's a different kind of role than a department chair that you might find in an extramural university. The training director part of my job is the part that's most related to my experience in CIRTL. So I was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison for graduate school, and let's see, so I did do a teaching as research project, and that project actually became a chapter in my thesis because my thesis was related to heart valve tissue engineering, and my teaching as research project was related to the cardiovascular system. So we did an outreach activity to see if people had better learning gains in settings where they were expecting to experience learning versus unexpected settings, right? And so that was really exciting. And my PhD advisor at the time, Kristen Masters, who later became in charge of the Delta program, which was the CIRTL manifestation at UW, was extremely supportive of me taking courses and doing a teaching as research project and incorporating it into my thesis. And she thought all of that was pretty cool, that I was able to bring it together. And let's see, so the kind of experience that I had through the courses that I took and the project that I created in the CIRTL program gave me a really good foundational understanding of mentoring and pedagogy and basically all of the elements that you would consider in the teaching and mentoring space. And those were things that were really interesting to me. And I would say originally I went to grad school because I thought I wanted to be a professor because I really liked teaching and mentoring and pushing for institutional change and research. And it turns out that's not the order that you need to like those things to become a PI at a research one institution. And so I always did something on the side that I thought was just a fun project. And for me, the Delta program always provided that kind of fun extra project that I did on the side of my research. And then I decided I would take a postdoc at the NIH. And my perception of the NIH was I would go there and there would no longer be any, distracting projects outside of my research. This would be it, 100% tunnel vision on in the research realm. And it turns out the NIH offers just as many really exciting opportunities to do fun projects outside of the lab as anywhere else. And so almost as soon as I got there, I started taking on other projects that were outside of the lab as well. And so these also had some kind of educational focus in some cases, but sometimes more of a policy or advocacy focus as well. And so basically those experiences that I had in those fun projects outside of the lab ultimately added up to something concrete that I wasn't necessarily aiming for in the beginning, but it really provided this really diverse array of experiences that apparently made me an attractive candidate for joining the training office in our institute. And so when that opportunity came up for me when I was a postdoc, I really had to seriously weigh whether I was ready to leave the bench and take all of the fun projects and interests that I'd done on the side and make that into my full-time job, or if I wanted to continue to pursue a research career. And in the end, the opportunity that came up was just too unique and too attractive for me. And so I decided to take the plunge and leave the research at the time and really focus 100% on the educational and administrative aspects of the role that I always thought were just fun things to do on the side, but it turns out you can have a whole career that's based around those things. And I think if I've covered everything, Rob, I think I'll stop there. And Rob, you're muted.
I don't want you to answer this right now, but I'm curious how you got from cardiovascular to communication disorders, but we'll save that. I don't want to ask. I don't want to ask.
Okay, no problem.
I should say to the audience that while you're listening, you may be thinking of questions. So go ahead and put those in the chat as you think of them. So I guess I just want to ask Alyssa one more question. So where does training actually fit into your job?
Oh, sure. So that's a good question. So part of what most institutes, if not every institute at the NIH has, is they have trainees at every level. And so we have trainees from summer interns. We have a large post-baccalaureate fellow population of people who just graduated from college and want a little more research experience before they decide whether or not they want to go to medical or graduate school. We have a very small population of graduate students, and we're not a degree granting institution. So those we partner with other universities all around the world for that. And then we have a huge postdoc population. We have thousands of postdocs at the NIH. And so part of my job as training director is to make sure that all of our trainees are getting what they need out of their training experience. And so part of that is partnering either with the trainee or with the PI or providing programming or working with the network of training directors all across the NIH to make sure that everyone is adequately supported and has access to all the resources that they need and really that they're prepared for their next step. And so I give individual guidance, but we also offer different workshops and seminars. And again, partner all across the NIH to provide the kind of programming that people need, in addition to the Office of Intramural Training and Education, which is a central office that's also focused on training for all of the trainees at NIH. So there's a hugely supportive community. So even though we don't have faculty who teach, we have a lot of trainees who are all trying to prepare during their transition for whatever their next career stage will be. And so my job is overseeing that program and making sure that everybody's able to achieve the goals that they're working towards.
Right, good, thanks. So Deb, tell us about your job.
So, hi everyone, I'm Deb Ruck. Like Rob said, I work at the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium, and we are an organization that strives for STEM education reform. Our new tagline is Evolution and Revolution in STEM. That's brand new, right, hot off the presses. And I obviously work with professional development. Most of the opportunities that I'm in charge of have been run through the CUBES project, which is Quantitative Undergraduate Biology Education and Synthesis. And there's some administrative shuffling going on, but things are becoming BioQuest that were CUBES. The names are just changing, nothing else is changing. But we do full semester long professional development opportunities called faculty mentoring networks that allow a group of faculty, any kind of faculty, to come together, usually to implement a material or to work on a problem together or write materials for their classes. And we have a structure set up that the faculty meet throughout the course of the semester. You have like that support system in that community, and they've been hugely successful. So much so that my second year, we went from having 4 FMNs run in a semester to 10 the next semester. So similar to what Alyssa was saying, I also train the trainers now. So instead of running each of the faculty mentoring networks, I now train the mentors who are therefore then running their networks. I also work with the BioQuest Summer Workshop, which has been going on for 35 years since the beginning of BioQuest. Unsurprisingly, last year it was online, and this year again we're doing it online, and we've actually found that we got such a cool new diverse group of people coming to the workshop that we're going to continue to have some sort of online component, and so that will be my baby going forward. I also was at UW-Madison. I did a teaching as research project on, hilariously enough, building community in online environments, which I did not put together until I was on one of these panels and I said that out loud. Like, oh, yeah, that's what I do. So was hugely important to my understanding of what I do. And similar to Lisa as well, my PI was not as accepting of my CIRTL and Delta interest he was like, yeah, fine, whatever, as long as you get your research done. And then alongside that, I was also working with the Crow Institute for the Study of Evolution, doing outreach work. So working with families and then also doing professional development for K-12 teachers. And in a twist of fate, the woman that I worked with at the doing outreach, working with the teachers, actually became the executive director of BioQuest. And then several years later, I finished my PhD in 2014. She called me up and was like, we need somebody to work part-time with these faculty mentoring networks. I had a baby at home, and it's our organization is completely online. We're spread all over the country. And so it was just like, you could sit at your computer and, do work and work with faculty and all of this. And so that's kind of how I fell into this position. But yeah, I've loved it, and doing those silly little things on the side that just were for fun, turns out that's exactly where I wanted to be. And my job has gotten bigger through time. We now offer more professional development. I now work writing grants so that we can continue to do professional development. And I'm working more and more with the directors on the admin side of BioQuest. BioQuest is a very small organization. We have like 5 staff members, and everything is done by committee and volunteers. So we're a very close-knit community. Did I answer all the questions, Rob?
Yeah, I think that that pretty much covers it for now. James, tell us about your job.
Hi, everyone. My name is James Schwabacher, and I graduated from Northwestern with my PhD in 2020, right around a year ago. And then pretty soon thereafter started as a consultant at Bagoo Consulting, which is where I am currently. And so we provide a suite of services to the life sciences, so primarily pharmaceutical and biomedical organizations. And so a lot of that revolves around data science and analytics. And so my day-to-day work, which is really varied and changes every day, revolves developing and overseeing kind of computer codes and processes that will aggregate a bunch of different data sources, create reports. So that also means there's data visualization involved. There's also a lot of logistics and coordinating between our clients and other external stakeholders, kind of keeping the ship running and making sure that everything is aligned. So there really is a lot of varied work and projects that come up. The clients will change and the questions that they ask will change. And there's a lot of problem solving and kind of quantitative work involved. And so that's been really helpful for me coming in with a physical chemistry background. So it kind of feels familiar. I also enjoy the fact that it's still related to the scientific community, and that our clients are heavily invested in scientific research and kind of the applications of all of that. So I was involved with CIRTL at Northwestern from about 2017 all the way through my defense in 2020. That it kind of started where I was a student in one of the MOOCs, the STEM teaching MOOCs. And from there, I also participated in one of the learning communities, the MCLCs. After that, I was asked to kind of be a peer leader for these MCLCs. And then while doing that, I also created a TAR project. So I was involved there as well. That kind of snowballed into an internship with CIRTL at Northwestern, which was really cool. And I kind of developed materials for future MCLC peer leaders. And I really enjoyed that bit of work. And so something I've been thinking about recently, knowing that I would be sitting on this panel, was kind of what CIRTL has given to my current career. And I find I'm always thinking about learning objectives. Whenever there's a particular meeting or report or presentation, I always go into it with, okay, what kind of thing like students should be able to. But think about for my audience, like what should the clients take away from this? What do I want my colleagues to take away from this? And then also, if there are questions from my end, like what are the things that I want to be able to do when I'm done with this meeting, this project, this report? And that's not something I would have ever expected or anticipated going into this. And so I just kind of want all of you to at least take away one thing, that you should kind of have an open mind about your CIRTL experiences and how they might show up later on your career path, it's more applicable than you probably realize at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. So Alyssa mentioned that the list of things you need to do as a faculty member is what she was interested in, but she wasn't interested in them in the order you have to be interested in. That probably means with grant activity and research at the very top. And so I'm curious about when you three realized that you were not going to shoot for a career like that, and when you decided that something else might be a good alternative.
So I'm happy to lead with that.
Sure.
I guess I'll say I was never sure. I went to graduate school because I thought being a professor looked pretty cool from the outside. And graduate school was a time for me to see what being a professor looked like more on the inside. And I have a lot of interests in general. I think I always have. And so for me, really focusing and picking a path is really hard because I really like doing a little bit of everything. And so I think it was not some, obvious eureka moment, but I think it was sort of a gradual, what am I interested in? And when I came to the end of my time as a graduate student, I looked into, policy positions and industry positions and postdoc positions. And I was trying to get a sense of what I thought I might like. And doing a postdoc position is a little bit of a way to delay that decision even further, right? Because now you still don't have to pick a path, you get some more skills and more experience. And then you can think about that in a couple of years. And when I came to the NIH, the Office of Intramural Training and Education, OITE, has so many resources for job searching that I became sort of borderline obsessed with job searching, right? And professional development. And what are the opportunities that are really out there for a PhD? Because before I'm going to make the ultimate choice of choosing a path that cuts off other paths, I really want to have as much information as possible. It was like a huge data collection initiative for me to do informational interviews and attend panels and then create groups that created those panels. And I guess I went down the spiral of professional development and career exploration to the point where the level that I was into it actually continued to prepare me for the job that I ended up getting, where I essentially help people make those decisions themselves. And so I think for me, it was a bit of a natural progression based on all of the things that I just mentioned. So I don't think it was, is it academia or industry? And I'm going to make this choice. It was more like continuing to have these things where I'm interested in them. And one of those things was, what are the options? That became really a huge point of education for myself to be able to discover that. And that naturally led me to this position.
Yeah. I have to say, being a faculty member for me has been a pretty cool thing. And I've been able to explore lots of things too. So I don't want anybody in the audience to think that you can't explore lots of things being a faculty member. But,
no, and I don't want anybody to think that I ruled out being if anything, I don't think I actively even ruled it out. Like an opportunity came up for me that was really attractive and I took it. And I don't know that I ever really got to the point where I said, a faculty position is absolutely not right for me. I think an opportunity came up where I said, is this maybe more right for me? And is it a unique opportunity for me that really plays to my strengths in a way that, a faculty position may not have done in exactly the same way. And so I still am excited about the idea of people becoming faculty members. It's not something that I've written off. I still look at it and think, if I had gone down that other path, what would that look like for me? Because there are so many attractive things about being a faculty member as well.
Right. Yeah, well said. Deb, what did you do directly after your graduate work?
So,
how did you wind up in this?
This is interesting because I was kind of pushed in this direction because I was a paleontology PhD. And it turns out that there are not a lot of faculty positions for that. They just don't exist. And as I said, I was really interested in outreach and education. And so I looked at a lot of teaching jobs. I looked at a lot of museum jobs. The last museum job I applied for had 625 applicants at the Smithsonian. So, you know, I was feeling good about that. But basically, I was a stay-at-home mom. I graduated 8 months pregnant with my first daughter, and I did not have the opportunity to really go all in with the job searching. And again, it's just the faculty jobs were not there for what I was interested in doing. Mm-hmm. So I helped Don Gillian Daniels and Colleen McClin run an online teaching class back in the day, like 2015. And I adjunct at George Mason University for a semester, just kind of trying to figure out what I could do with the education that I had. And then again, this one kind of fell into my lap and again, played to all of my strengths. And I really love what I do, and I really love the flexibility that I have working from home and all of that. And so I probably would not swing back to the faculty, but it also might be a little too late for me since I've been out of out of academia for 7 years, you know, didn't really publish a lot out of my dissertation, you know, those kinds of issues. But yeah, mine was more of a stumbling than like a decision.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, I think that will be true of a lot of people. James, why are you not a practicing physical chemist?
So the evolution kind of happened throughout my PhD. In my first year of graduate school, I was coming from a smaller institution into Northwestern's big research university. And then I kind of realized within the first year, like, okay, I don't think I necessarily want R1. Like I want a more like primarily undergraduate institution. And then around end of year 2, I was kind of realizing that I didn't want to be in the lab as much anymore. Like I really liked the data and the visualization and the presentations and the teaching, but I did not want the hands-on kind of experimental work, but I was an experimental chemist. So from there, I started thinking more about, well, what are kind of the situations where I would just be teaching? I started looking at community colleges, and CIRTL was a big help in exploring all of that. And then towards the end of my PhD, I was realizing that, well, I didn't necessarily want to move again. And sometimes for academia, you know, you have those cross-country moves. You kind of go where the jobs are. And I kind of wanted to stay put in the Chicago area. And so kind of that geographic restriction was very helpful in the sense that it allowed me to really hone in on my job search. I did look at professional development positions. I did look at teaching positions, both and non-teaching but academic positions inside of academia. And I applied to a variety of things. The role that I have now, I actually was not looking forward to the interview at all. If you would tell my younger self that I was in a position now with the title of consultant, I would say, oh, really? Because that never looked appealing to me at all. But one of my career advisors suggested, like, well, just go on the interview and, you know, see, don't rule anything out yet, just see how you feel. And I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed kind of the smaller case studies that happened during the interviews. I enjoyed meeting the folks who are now my colleagues. And I walked away really excited about the opportunity. And that's not something that I would have expected going into it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think it's very hard for us in academia to really understand consulting. How can you be a consultant if you haven't actually done something yet? And I never understood it until my older son became a consultant for McKinsey.
It also means the title itself can mean very different things depending on the organization as well. So for those of you who are maybe more familiar with like the management consulting aspect, kind of those are the larger firms. There's definitely some of that work in what I do every day, but there's also a lot more data science. So you might think of more of those data science positions. So it's a mix of everything, and you that was one of the challenges during my own career search, was trying to figure out what does this title mean at this organization, because it's not standardized in any way. And so that's something that informational interviews are kind of critical for figuring out.
Right. Okay. So that's really good information, and it's interesting how different the stories are for the just the three people we've assembled here. Let's see. I have more questions, but does anyone in the audience want to ask the panel in general, or one of the panelists a question? Just, you can raise your hand and we'll recognize you.
So my question is for James, and I was wondering if you could tell us more about what the data science aspect of your jobs looks like, because I feel like this that term is kind of vague, but I see it in a lot of different job ads. And so I'm wondering if you're using more social science methods in your work, like regressions or structural equation modeling, or are you doing more like big data type things like machine learning and textual analyses?
So it will vary by kind of client and the data that we have and specific questions they're asking. There is definitely some big data work, some machine learning. There is some forecasting. For the codes that I kind of run on a day-to-day basis, I work primarily in SAS, and it's a lot of kind of more simpler statistics and more quantitative information for kind of the business units at our clients, but there are much more complicated forecasting models, kind of big data projects that I don't work on directly, but that we kind of provide for our clients. So we also employ a lot of people with a much larger and more robust data science background and coding background than I have, who are kind of doing these sorts of things. So it's really the whole gamut. Essentially, whatever serves the needs of our clients is kind of what we put forward.
Okay, that's helpful, because I'm in a sociology PhD program now, and I do a lot of quantitative work, and I would love to be able to find a position where I could keep using social science methods. And so it's helpful to know that that is an option out there, because sometimes when I see data science and see big data stuff, that's not quite what social scientists always do. So it's helpful to know that there's a range in these types of positions. And I guess that's something that one should ask about.
Definitely. I believe there are like marketing research firms that kind of work with the public to do some marketing research that might employ more social science type data science, but I'm not as familiar with that area. But it's always good to ask kind of what languages are being used and what kinds of methods. And what I found is that it varies widely. One of the reasons that I enjoy my position and enjoyed the transition into my position is because my firm really assumes that the new hires don't have much of a data science background and kind of teach us from the ground up some of the coding skills that we'll need to be successful in our positions. And then from within the firm, you can kind of grow and build your own path. So that was important for me because I had very limited coding experience in my PhD. I was mostly in the lab.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Oh, Rob, you're on mute still.
Thank you. I'll learn this eventually. Maybe. We have a question from Yi Ling. Would you like to turn your mic on and ask that, or would you want me to read it?
And Rob, just so you know, one person has their hand up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is basically, I feel that our PhD training don't emphasize too much about job outside of academia. So when it comes to the time that you look for job, I actually don't know what's the keyword I should use aside from anthropology or archaeology. Like I have limited knowledge about what to do. And also according to what James just mentioned, that sometimes a title can mean so many different things according to the institution. Then my question would be, what would be a better strategy? I mean, aside to look for job that's outside of your network. And yeah, thank you.
So one thing that I will suggest is, and James mentioned this before, informational interviews. with people can also connect you to like other ideas. So like if you start with one, like you find this one person who does something that sounds vaguely cool, go talk to them, and then they might be able to suggest something else for you. I completely understand what you mean. I actually tapped into, or not, I didn't do this so much, my husband did this, like the alumni network of his department. They had like connections with alumni, and so he contacted alumni from his department who had left academia, because his professors were very honest. They're just like, I don't know about leaving academia, I'm in academia. And so it was nice that he had like that kind of community to go to. The CIRTL alumni are also probably a good place to ask those kind of questions, get connected with people who have similar backgrounds to you, and what kinds of things you might want to do. But yeah, sitting down and talking to somebody about what they actually do helps you understand what a organization does, helps explain what the title means, and then also can really can connect you to other people. It's like, oh, well, maybe this isn't quite right for you, but I know this guy over here, and you should go talk to him because he does this.
Yeah, James has put in the chat that that's a good strategy too. Yeah, Yiling, where are you? Are you in a CIRTL program now?
Yeah, I am. I actually just discovered it this year, and which is actually quite late because I'm in job market right now. But I actually think this, because usually I only join our own local teaching center community, and then because of pandemic, I started thinking, okay, why not go look outside, and which is actually fun because I also run into some situation that I'm kind of lose my passion to finish my dissertation, which is basically like just one step. And I just couldn't pay much attention on that. And I have so many different side projects, which I have so many passion for. But going through CIRTL course actually bring me back to look into my own material from a different angle, like student perspective. And actually that helped me to start to get more interest in my own research, and then thinking what I can use for future. I don't know, but yeah, that's my position.
So we should invite you to join the CIRTL alumni network. Which university are you at?
I'm at Washington University in St. Louis.
Okay, good, thanks. Shamil has a question.
Hi, thanks, Rob. So this question is for Deb and Alyssa. I am a PhD student at Northwestern. I'm studying material science. I want to move back to the DC area where I'm from. So I noticed from your descriptions that you guys are both in DC. So I'm seeing that connection. I want to do something in the education space for sure. And so when I heard your job descriptions, I found it really exciting. I noticed that some of your job descriptions probably aren't always filled by PhDs. And so I'm curious, what sort of other degrees and paths do people have going into your job? And what sort of advantage did you have as a PhD applying for those particular positions? What did your PhD give you or help you achieve in that particular space?
I'm happy to go. So the training directors at the NIH, with only a couple of exceptions, all do have PhDs. But I think it's always a discussion in any field, especially new fields like those that involve like postdoctoral career development, in terms of what qualities are necessary to hold any job that isn't as prescriptive as a job where, it's been established over, generations and everyone has a good idea of what that person should look like. In my case, having a PhD makes you intimately aware of everything that's necessary to go through the training experience yourself. So if you're going to end up in a job like mine, where you're essentially coaching people through their own training experiences and ensuring that not only are they getting what they need, but that their relationship with their mentor and the long-term success of those people in the program are, where you want to be in terms of the director of a training program, then having been through it yourself really helps give you that basis. And actually having gone through the CIRTL program really helped me, because probably the most impactful element that I went through with CIRTL was entering mentoring. And that really gave me my first look into, you can mentor from mentee up. This is like, there's ideas and ideals for what mentoring could and should look like, right? And so those things were all helpful in terms of me getting my current job. And that is in addition to the logistical aspect, which is that if I wasn't a postdoc in my own institute at the time when this idea of this position for me was coming about, it's unlikely that I would have ever known about this position or would have known to pursue it. These jobs, the kind of job that I'm in, there aren't that many like it. There are 20 something other jobs like it at the NIH, but in terms of having an analogous position in other places, maybe being the director of a postdoc career center at a university might be similar to the training director part of my job. But with all of the different things that I get to do at NIDCD, I would say I don't know of another job like mine. And so having those connections that you make through the training process, as well as I think using that experience to determine what are the things I like to do. All of those things are really helpful and valuable in terms of moving forward. So I don't think without that combination of things, I would be here in this job.
Yeah, for me, I did stumble into this job, as I mentioned. It's nice that I have the PhD and I am on a similar level with the rest of the faculty, because I work with faculty. So that's the other thing, is like I have never been a faculty, but I work with a lot of faculty, and so I'm able to have at least that connection with them, that we all went through it to get to where we are. On the DC side, we do have a lot of community colleges in DC and some really great ones. I don't know if we're giving out email addresses at the end of this or anything, but I can put mine in the chat. If you're interested in anything like that, I can hook you up. And also Capital One is outside of DC and they do data science. There's like 1 million data scientists there, if that's something that you're interested in too. But there's just so much stuff here. There are so many things here.
I'll add to Deb, if you're interested in working in a training office at the NIH, I'm always happy to circulate CVs to my fellow training directors, because it's not just a training director. At larger institutes, they have larger offices with people who are working under the director, and sometimes multiple offices in the same institute. And so there are opportunities here, even if they're not the traditional educational opportunities you might get at like a degree granting institution or a community college.
We could slightly expand on Shamil's question and ask James about the PhD aspect of his job, because many consultants come out of undergraduate and become consultants. What did the PhD add to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there, at least for my firm now, there is a bit of a title difference. So a student coming out of undergrad or a master's program would start as an associate consultant, whereas coming out of a PhD program, you start as a consultant, and there's this expectation that you're going to onboard and ramp up more quickly, and that you can kind of pull on your background as a PhD student. When I realized, when I first started considering that I wanted to maybe leave academia, I started looking at like various job postings, organizations, and I found that I gravitated towards places that were already employing PhDs. And so some of the partners at Bagoo do have their PhDs. They have that PhD and also that scientific background. So there was an understanding already that the organization knows what it is to have a PhD and kind of what that process is like. And they have an experience working with people who have PhDs. And so I think that if you are interested in leaving academia, you don't necessarily have to look only for organizations that have hired PhDs in the past, but it's certainly helpful to kind of keep an eye out for organizations where folks do already have their PhDs, because that's going to be helpful for you as they have kind of that understanding of your background and what you can bring. On a personal level, being able to kind of learn things very quickly is really key. And it is something that I don't think is that common for folks who maybe did not go to graduate school. And so I would say always rely on and fall back on the fact that you know how to learn, and you're going through CIRTL programming. So you're also learning how to teach others what you've learned. And so you're going to be like a key player in whatever organization is lucky to have you.
Yeah. Great. Well, we hope you all in the audience get jobs. I have a question from Tina. Do you want to ask it yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for your time today. So your words about having the side projects while you're in grad school and having that be refreshing really resonated because I feel the same way. But then also sometimes it's nice to, especially because sometimes these fun side projects are like big ideas or sometimes a little bit heavy. Sometimes it's like, all right, you know, back to the worm gonads, like it's really small, like going back to the thesis is nice. So I'm wondering, now that you've made the fun side project full-time work, how do you find that?
So I'm happy to jump in. Yes, I definitely took my side project. What was it, worm gonads? My worm gonads is working on our platform and working directly with the faculty on, my colleague and I call it, we're in the weeds. Like when all of the big picture stuff goes out the window because I need to get this one thing looking exactly right. And that's going to take me like 6 iterations of saving and then refreshing and then saving again to get it to look right. And so I do think that there are actually those little pieces in every job that, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about when you're just like, I need to come out of the clouds and I need to just like sit and do something very directed. So for me, there's a lot of opportunities to do those things too. And my organization is very flexible. So if I showed interest in something else, maybe perhaps worm gonads, they would be happy for me to work that into what I do as well.
So it's a combination of big picture and small things and things you love doing and things you need to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's no way around it that no matter what you're doing, there will be things that you like doing more than other things, right? I mean, that's like the inherent nature of having multiple things to do. There will always be something that you prefer. I think for me, one of the things that I really liked was just having a lot of different things to do. And so for me, the biggest transition from being in the lab was that sometimes being in the lab was like, I sit alone in a dark room analyzing movies for 6 hours and I come out and like, what time is it? And have I eaten lunch? Right. Like, and that sort of like zoned out feeling. Whereas my job now has far fewer opportunities for that kind of like super in-depth thinking for hours at a time. Like the job that I have now is like a hand in so many things that I don't get to go in that level of depth on almost anything. It's like maybe, light to medium depth on a lot of different things. And for me, I think having all of those different things to have the option to work on and switch to another thing, and then the next day I'm working on something totally different, for me is what is as attractive as any particular project. I mean, like I said before, I was never one of these people who, I really don't like research and I can't wait to get away from it, or I have no interest in a faculty position. It wasn't like that. It was like, I like everything, but the amount that I liked everything was sort of equal. And I didn't want to have 90% research and 10% everything else. I liked having sort of an even split of all of the things that I was working on. And so now it's a different split, and it's not research and it's not that super in-depth thinking for like days or weeks about a single problem, but I still really like the fact that I get to work on a lot of different things, and that there's a lot of variety in what I do.
Right. I'm not seeing any other questions from the audience. Maybe I can ask one more question to end on, which would be, are you now stable in this position for the next 10 years? Or if you wanted to move up, are there possibilities for promotion in these careers? Or how do you think about the future if you do?
I'll try to go quickly. So I think if the question is like, could I stay in this position until I retire? I'm in a federal position that is extremely stable. It's as stable as any position gets, right? So I could just choose to stay here in this position. In a smaller institute, it's not as stratified, so there are not as many opportunities to get promoted. there's no like linear upward chain per se. But there are still opportunities, like Deb was saying, to like, if I wanted to pursue a different project or take something in a different direction, there are a lot of opportunities to try new things and gain new experiences. So in that sense, there's opportunity, but I would argue that in the postdoc career development space, these careers are still so new that it is unclear what most people's career trajectory is or will be in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I also, as I said, we're very community and volunteer focused, and my job's gotten just like bigger. So it's not really up, it's just out. So I was the faculty mentoring network director or manager, and now I'm the professional development manager. Like, you know, I went out. And now I'm starting to do more administrative tasks. I don't know if I will still be here in 10 years. I really do like my flexibility though. So at least 5.
With consulting, it will vary by firm, but in general, there's usually a lot of opportunity to move up within your firm, which is very true for BioQuest. There's also usually opportunity to move into the particular industry you might be consulting for, right? So when organizations in the industry that you consult for are looking to hire, they will also look for people with experience consulting to them. It might be folks they know and who they've met. There is also the opportunity to take the skills that you might have learned or developed while consulting and move into a different industry. So there's kind of those different paths that you can take. For myself personally, I have been, and I'm really excited with the idea of maybe staying somewhere for a while. I've been actively telling people that this is kind of the first time where I'm trying to just enjoy the job that I have and try to, do it really well. Because in grad school, you're always thinking about the next position, the next hoop you have to jump through. And I thought, well, I'm going to try at least for a year or two just to calm down and to enjoy where I'm at and kind of enjoy life post PhD and kind of see what happens and just make sure that I'm learning within my position and doing my position really well.
Can I add, I just want to add one last thing to what James said, which is that people get really freaked out when they are looking for their position out of grad school or postdoc because they feel like it's this like lifetime commitment and an unchangeable decision. And it's not. Just, you can pick something that you feel like looks good for now and you can always make a change later.
Right. Okay. So the weather's warm, but the message is just chill, everybody. It's going to be okay. Thanks everybody for coming and engaging with us. Kitch has put a link to a brief evaluation in the chat, but I believe it will also get emailed to you. So thanks to the panelists, especially for taking the time out of their day to talk to us all. I think we always learn things from hearing about other people's careers. So thanks again, and we'll see you at some future CIRTL event.